To you, Katie.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, camera two.
I would now like to call to order the November 12th, 2024 meeting of the Indiana State Board of Education. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bess.
Here.
Ms. DeLosa. Mr. Durham.
Present.
Dr. Ernest.
Here.
Mr. Gassnow.
Here.
Ms. Hamill.
Here.
Mr. Mapes is absent. Ms. Moat.
Oh, she's here. I see her,
Okay.
and she's blinking. Yeah, we can hear you.
Now we can, yep. Ms. Rentschler.
Here.
Mr. Watts.
Here.
And Dr. Jenner.
Here. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
With a motion and a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the October 2nd, 2024 meeting?
So moved.
With a motion and a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So kicking off the meeting today in November, as many of you know, yesterday was Veterans Day. So I just want to start, we as a board want to start. Are there any veterans in the room? And if so, can you please stand? We have no veterans in our present room, but for those watching at home or those serving as teachers in our school or as parents of children in our classrooms, thank you so much for your service to our country. I hope yesterday was certainly a great celebration for you, but most importantly, I hope we celebrate you every single day and you know our significant appreciation. Yesterday, many of our schools throughout the state hosted Veterans Day ceremonies or celebrations. I know that locally, I live in Jefferson County. Many of you know several of the schools had their own unique celebration where veterans would come in and, having the students actually sit in the audience and see the veteran, whether they're 80 years old or newly enlisted is just really important for them to see the dedication and passion about our country. We did award 131 schools as newly designated or renewed Indiana Purple Star schools. You can read more about what that means, but at a high level, these schools go above and beyond to support their veteran parents and families, and military parents and families. Today, well, actually, before I jump right into today, one other thing. The public comment period for the second draft of the diploma closed this past Friday. So again, as we've talked through this whole process, we were required as a board to go through 2 drafts, 2 public comment periods, each 30 days with a public hearing. So the second public hearing was held on Friday. Our team board is right now compiling all of that feedback. The feedback where the first draft had some significant adjustments, more streamlining, adding simplicity. You can absolutely tell with the types of comments that we're receiving that we have a very solid structure. We might just have a few tweaks here and there, but we will be prepared as a board to vote on that in December. Today, we'll hear from Dr. Rebecca Estes and our partners at the Mind Trust on the progress being made through math and reading supports. And at this time, are there any other board member comments or reports? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. We'll start with Dr. Michaela. Gosh, Michaela, I should know your last name, and now I'm reading your Now I'm reading your handwriting.
Yeah, that'll do it too.
Hey, we'll let you say it so that I get it. Go ahead and say it.
Dr. Michaela Spangenberg.
Spangenberg, Dr.
Yes.
Michaela Spangenberg. Thank you for being
Yeah.
here.
Thank you. Yeah, the handwriting's definitely a requirement for the doctorate, right? Pleasure to be here today. And hopefully I'll continue to be able to come down more often. I do miss these meetings. On the topic of the diploma, I'm glad that we are already speaking about this. I feel like the simplest solutions are often the best solutions. And the core diploma we had before wasn't bad. Like it needed math. There needed to be like more math to kind of get up to federal college kind of requirements. There did need to be some alternatives in terms of how people could meet kind of additional kind of requirements beyond that. For me, the most important part of this, though, is that it still looks like we're substituting out things, and not every school corporation, not every parent, not every, unfortunately, even school counselor is going to have the expertise and the ability to kind of oversee all these students with all these pathways and make sure that everything is getting taken into consideration when it comes to, is this student going to have a diploma at the end of it that's going to allow them to move out of state if they want to pursue work, to go to a college in future? Because that's the thing. Some of our students, I was a student that didn't intend to go to college. I was a construction laborer out of high school. Before that, I was a pet groomer. Very strange transition there. But I didn't even know what college was when I got out of high school. If I hadn't have had a diploma that, you know, any college could have looked at and said, oh yeah, this diploma, this meets our requirements, I couldn't have gone into college. I couldn't have gone a doctorate. It took me a very long time to do it, worked my way through school. But I want all of our students to have that opportunity, right? We shouldn't have less opportunities than in neighboring states or any other state, really. So we need to make sure that we still have those core requirements no matter what. You know, if we want to do other things as an add-on, if we want to give kids a leg up into different industries, give them well-supervised experiences with people that we can trust and that we've vetted well, that we have very concrete criteria for vetting, that's fabulous. I love the idea of anything that helps our students get into trades. I'm from an area where we have a huge demand for that, and we're always trying to expand on that. But the problem is, you'll have people just show up in your community and propose things, and they look good on paper, but the more you dig into it, the worse it looks. So we have to be careful about where we're sending our students. We have to be careful to make sure we're still allowing them to keep their options open. And so my kind of proposed solution would be, if we just kept our old core diploma, added math, put all these beautiful pathways in there too, and then funding to make sure that it's not just some schools that can pursue this, but all school corporations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We now have Randy Greenwell.
Good morning,
Good morning.
and thank you to the members of the Indiana State Board of Education for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Randy Greenwell, and I come to you from the business sector as an educational support manager for Conn-Selmer, a partner company of Steinway. On behalf of our business, with corporate headquarters located and factories located in Elkhart, Indiana, we still believe there should be a fine arts requirement in the base diploma, and given the time constraints to properly consider such an option, we are respectfully asking and requesting that a 2-credit requirement for the arts be added to the honors diploma seal, allowing the fine arts requirements to be maintained as they currently exist. I'm here as an advocate for a 2-credit arts requirement as part of the new general baseline diploma to ensure all Indiana students have the benefits of an arts education. But why? Because as a world-renowned company, that needs quality employees, we understand and see every day in the hiring process that students involved in the arts have developed communication skills, work ethic, leadership skills, adaptability, problem solving, and emotional intelligence. Furthermore, they show up on time and are long-term employees. In short, they are hireable. As a company, we understand that the daunting task of setting up educational systems that ideally will lead to a more stable, consistent, and prepared workforce. But not including arts education as a requirement will only serve to erode the preparedness of thousands of Indiana high school students for college, vocational schools, and eventually our workforce. The arts invigorate a community, motivate students to attend school, and teach life skills and characteristics easily identifiable by employers seeking employees we can count on day in and day out. Without question, if a candidate was involved in the arts, they are likely more employable by us. Finally, in a March 2018 article in the San Diego Workforce Journal, they cited an IBM poll revealing that business CEOs rank creativity at the top of their list in important leadership qualities. Where does one foster creativity? In the arts, of course. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Randy. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
With a motion and a second, I'll pause because I believe we do have some recusals on this vote.
Yep, I have to recuse myself from item E.
Item E, Iris, got it?
I also recuse myself from item E.
William, also item E. Any others? All right. With the motion, second, and recusals, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. So we'll now, say it one. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. We'll now shift on to our discussion item for today. It's regarding the Summer Learning Labs and the Indiana Learns update. As you know, as a board and the general public, we've been working hard to understand what's the return on the investment that we're getting in education. And let's understand what's working and let's do more of that. Let's understand what maybe is not working as well, and let's take that money and invest it into what's working. So today you'll hear about a couple of areas that we have invested in as a state, and you'll hear from Dr. Rebecca Estes and Brandon Brown.
Good morning.
And I should have done a better introduction for each of you, so if you could introduce yourselves as well, that would be super. Thank you.
Beautiful. Hi, I'm Dr. Rebecca Estes. We've met before. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the board for this opportunity to share an update both about Summer Learning Labs and the Indiana Learns program in partnership with the Mind Trust. As you know, we have intentionally been incredibly focused on evaluating programs and use of funds relative to the impact something has on student learning outcomes. We previously shared how the investment in the literacy cadre work far exceeded individual science of reading grant investments. It truly is a goal to be transparent about what is working. On that note, I've invited Brandon Brown, incredible, fantastic, wonderful CEO, you told me to work on the introduction, of Mind Trust, to present an exciting update on how these programs have impacted Indiana students. So Brandon, if you would. I'm told this works.
Okay.
But if not, holler.
Great. Yep. Great. Well, it is fantastic to be with y'all today, and I appreciate all of the nice adjectives too, so thank you. So we are about 4 years into something that if you would have asked me a few years ago, I would have said that we would have never done. And it's really about launching and scaling I think, new way to think about what really high-quality summer learning looks like. And we've been incredibly grateful and blessed to work with amazing partners at the DOE. And it's also great to work with state leaders who actually care about the return on investment and are laser-like focused on student outcomes. And that's really been the North Star of the two programs that we'll spend a few minutes here trying to talk about today. So a little bit of context on summer learning labs. This time, 4 years ago, kind of at the height of a really challenging time for educators, we started thinking with members of our community in Marion County, what would it look like to establish a community-wide, high-quality summer learning initiative? Knowing that schools were stressed, many of our educators were exhausted, and many of our families were in crisis. So we started planning in the winter of 2020 into 2021, not knowing if there were going to be resources, not knowing what this would look like, but really feeling convicted that we needed a community-based approach in Marion County to make sure that we were working to accelerate learning for students as quickly as we could. That resulted in what was then called, it resulted in a lot of conversations with state leaders around what could a state-level investment look like in something like this. And we were incredibly grateful to partner with our legislature, who appropriated meaningful resources for this and many other programs across the state to try new ideas to work to accelerate student learning. So the Indy Summer Learning Labs really was a culmination of a lot of local planning and a lot of work with state leaders to resource and to think about new ideas, to try to help kids in a time that was literally unprecedented. So a little bit of the nuts and bolts for what Summer Learning Labs is. There are three major components. One is it focuses on learning acceleration, not remediation. So all of the research says we can't just remediate, we have to accelerate learning, and that is a cornerstone of all of the academics in this program. Secondly, we want to make sure that we are supporting the students with the highest needs. So working in many of our communities that have great needs and have amazing assets, but just need a rigorous approach to high quality summer learning. And then three, what's really unique about this program is it's not just school-based. So it's community-based and school-based. So working with amazing CBOs and schools and school districts to think about where are kids spending a lot of their time in the summer, and how can we come to them to infuse high-quality learning in what's already happening in their communities. So we're really excited that when you look at the results, we'll talk about this in a little bit, the results at the CBOs are just as good as the results in schools. So we think that we've unlocked something here about the need for schools and communities to work together. And we have amazing assets in our communities every single day that we should figure out how to leverage within K-12 education. So we started this in Marion County in the summer of 2021, served around 3,000 students. That grew significantly in 2022, grew significantly again in 2023. And then we started having conversations with DOE around, look, there was an external study 2 years ago that validated students within summer learning labs made significantly more academic progress in both math and reading when you compare them to their peers, and they actually had rates of learning that far exceeded where they were before COVID. So we knew this worked, both using the internal quantitative data and an external rigorous study using iLearn. So the question was, how can we start to scale this to serve more students across the state? So last summer of 2024 was the first year where not only were Marion County students being served, but a lot of kids from many communities across the state were too, and we'll talk about this, but the results that we saw outside of Marion County were the same results that we've now seen for several years in Marion County, proving that we can replicate and scale a program like this with fidelity and really ensuring high quality results for kids. And then, so one more thing on the structure. So this is a full day program. The vast majority of the sites are free. There are a very small number that have a very low cost to them. And the structure of the day is 3.5 hours of rigorous math and reading instruction. but we also want to layer on really fun enrichment activities. Because who wants to go somewhere in the summer for the entire day and not have fun? So that is a key feature of this program. It should be academically rigorous and fun. And with a lot of the qualitative research, that is true. A lot of the kids love showing up. Many of their families see it as a blessing. And then the educators continue to be retained year over year, primarily because it's very important to us that we pay them a really competitive wage. So we were worried the first year that we weren't going to be able to recruit and retain educators. That actually has not been a problem. That has not been a barrier to growth. We have very high retention year over year. Many educators who were with us in 2021 are still with us. So in terms of the expansion this year, you have a map here in front of you. So it's been amazing to work with the Urban League in Northwest Indiana. There were 22 sites that spanned multiple communities. And then working with the Boys and Girls Club in Northern Indiana, many of those sites were in South Bend, but they were also in many surrounding communities as well. The interesting thing about those is they were school-based and community-based, so really replicating the model that we know works in Marion County. There were 16 sites in that region, really good success. Wabash was another region, so we worked with the YMCA there. And then obviously we continued the work in Marion County. And then we also worked in the southeast part of the state, so working with an amazing nonprofit. It was a little bit smaller there, but the results were actually very, very good. So it was important to leadership of the state that we thought about the entire state. So, not just Marion County, but also, kind of a representative sample of rural students, many urban students, northern end of the state, and the south. So we really feel like this is a geographic representation of our state. And we feel like the replication happened with fidelity primarily because the anchor partners that we worked with are high capacity organizations that have trust in their communities and have established relationships with schools and school districts. So one learning from this is thinking about who is the anchor partner in a community and how can we empower them to work with schools, school districts, and CBOs to really launch and scale what's happened in Marion County with real quality, real fidelity. So this slide just looks at the enrollment. So the vast majority of students are students of color in the program, and the vast majority are low-income students. So if you think about one of the three pillars, we know via the data around who we're serving that we are serving communities that have the highest needs, which is really important. Overall, this summer, there were 91 sites across the state, which, again, if you would have told me that in 2021, I would have said you were crazy. And we served about 9,000 students. And we now have the application open for the summer of 2025. And let me tell you, the demand from communities far outstrips what we have the ability to serve. So we get calls every single day from new communities, new anchor partners who have heard about the program, who have seen the results, and are incredibly excited to be part of it. So there is real demand from every corner of the state for programs like this, especially when they're so community-centered, leveraging anchor partners to really serve their community in ways that they know how to do. And then here's just a snapshot of results. We have loads of results. I think we've got like a 28-page report. But one slide here, looking at the proficiency improvements on the internal assessment from the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer. A couple of things. One is we wanted to look at these results to make sure that the Marion County results that we've seen the last few summers were replicated in new sites across the state. And as you see here, that was true. So the results that we see in Marion County are very consistent with what we're seeing in new sites across the state. Actually, the Marion County results were the best we've ever had this year. So we feel confident that the externally validated research is going to continue as we expand the program. It's also important when we look at the subgroup numbers that we see consistency across the board, and that's true. So across all subgroups, we see relatively consistent results across the board in both math in English. So we need to continue to validate this using iLearn data, and we'll continue to rigorously measure performance, but the early data does say that the success that we saw in Marion County has been replicated elsewhere. So I will stop there. That is the Summer Learning Labs part, and would be happy to take any questions or discussion.
Yeah, let's pause there. So as a board, quick summary, something that was working really well. We had internal and external validation that it showed statistical significance to move the needle for Indiana students, specifically some of our most at-risk student populations that as a board we've discussed frequently. How can we continue to make sure we're moving that needle? So we said, how might we try it in other places? Let's make sure we try it in urban and rural. And so what you see now with this slide, this is initial data based on pre-test, post-test. As Brandon mentioned, we will do the iLearn analysis as well to better understand. If this shows if it shows what this initial data projects, I think we need to figure out a way to continue investing in these other communities who are raising their hand and saying, we'd like to try it here. So that discussion will continue really into legislative session as we work with them to see how might we fund that, how might we support this. I think we'll also potentially pursue some philanthropic dollars to, again, these communities that are raising their hand and schools that want to be a part of this, we want to try to figure out how, especially when we're seeing the statistically positive data that we are so far. Also, one other thing just to give you a sense, remember, as a state, we spend, and I just sent a fact check, I don't think I've received it back, so I'm going to do a verbal fact check. David Buzzy, about $18 million per year. I should have given you more of a runway. I tried to text you. Okay, thank you. About $18 million per year we receive for summer school. And the majority of our summer school funding, the highest cost is still PE 1 and 2. Now, we were able to invest 100% of summer school or 100% reimbursement for reading this year. But I think that's an example of how we can keep our eye on what matters and where we're moving the needle, and let's invest there. So just wanted to give you some additional context, both current and future. Any other comments or thoughts about the Summer Learning Lab? And then Brandon will go to the next. Dr. Ernest.
Were the school-based ones able to access summer school funding?
Yes, so the school-based sites were able to augment with summer school funding.
Okay.
And we're thinking about, kind of moving forward, how can we be, smart about all of the streams of revenue that schools get to maximize the number of kids served. And, I think that's probably one piece of the puzzle for sure.
So do you follow up to that then, which is good? Is there any comparative research being done on this program versus traditional ways of doing summer school? Because I love what you said, Brandon. You know me well enough to know when you talk about having fun, that's part of class. And anybody that ever wants to argue with that with me, we can have that argument, right? Because it matters. This is so different. I just wonder if there's some comparison to, this is a new way of doing business, right? And
Yep.
So I think that's a good thing if we've got some data for that.
So that's a great question. This probably doesn't answer it exactly, but on the research front, so this program, and I should have mentioned this, has inspired 10 major cities across the country to replicate the program. And all of the components here have been replicated in major cities across the country. The first one was New York City, and it expanded to many more cities last year. There was a national study looking at the results from all of those cities, which was very consistent with what we saw here. So it's not necessarily comparing to traditional schooling, although that would be very interesting and we should make a note of that. But what we're seeing is that once it has scaled nationally, the research is very, very positive across the board.
Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Best.
Yeah, Dr. Jenner, you mentioned something I just want to reinforce, and that is, I mean, the preliminary data is great, right? And it's kudos to everybody involved in the program with that. But I think the compelling evidence, especially when we're talking about additional funding and or transforming, a traditional summer school into something like this, is how did those students do on our regular test, right? So I learn, I read, and being able to show, because when we go back to the reading stuff, and Dr. Esses, when she presented some of the information on like the cohort, like we saw compelling evidence that schools that participated in that training saw these dramatic increases, right? And that was really the way to reinforce this works, and not just works in a separate program with their own pre and post test. Again, I know the details, it's really valid and it's awesome, but for the state at large, you want to know, is this moving the needle on the metrics that we use in every day, right? So I learn, I read, and seeing how that moves us, right? And I think, my guess is, it's going to be really, really positive. But I think getting that, especially if you go back to the 2021 participants and seeing as they have progressed through, the upper elementary grades now, and going, are they better prepared? Because, coming out of the pandemic, we were all worried about these students that had that learning loss. What's that going to impact our college going rate, our graduation rates, like SAT, like all of those things we know are coming our way. And if we could show that this works with those metrics, then the question is just, how can you not afford to blow this out and do this as many places as possible, and or look at how do we do traditional school in those lower grades, and why not look at what's working here and say, well, what if that wasn't just in the summer? What if that was all 180 days during the school year? So anyhow, all that to say, I think as soon as we can get that data matched to the participants, the better story we'll have, obviously, timing-wise, going into legislative session and making our case for that. So, but again, kudos to you guys.
Yeah, and absolutely, Scott, the initial data, gosh, Brandon, was that back in summer 2021? And then we leveraged so summer 2021, we kicked it off. We leveraged the iLearn and iRead scores in spring of 2022, got the results back. That's what spurred this further scaling. So you'll see the exact same as soon as spring comes along, which not wishing the year away, but when spring comes along, we have iLearn, iRead. We'll absolutely leverage that data and understand those results. And I wanted the board to see the initial data because, of course, we will not have that iLearn, iRead data for this cohort in front of legislative session. So this initial data is a starting point, and we'll know more in the next probably 8 months or so.
That's right.
But totally agree, and thank you for that. Brandon, any other comments to what Mr. Best shared?
Yeah, so I think that's spot on. We won't have the iLearn analysis for the expansion sites until after the 2025 iLearn. We are, exactly to your point, Scott, are looking at can we look at the data over multiple years for students who might have did it in 2021 and then might have participated for multiple years to see if there might be some compounding impacts over time. So we are looking at the existing data for the Marion County sites to try to get a little bit more granular information now that we have several years of data.
Mr. Watts?
You kind of answered my question there, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. Like, so the pre and post test, was that created specifically for you?
It was specifically created by the
Indiana standards. Like, is my real question.
Yes, it was specifically created for the program, and it's specifically aligned to state standards for Indiana.
Okay. And that's what I would love to see, that year after year data, because what I don't want us to do is, especially if it's aligned completely to our standards, is the students 3 grade levels behind when they come to you, but they still don't pass iRead or iLearn, but you gained 2 grade levels, then that's still, this is really, really working. So I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that they're not
again,
Great point.
I'm going to quote my good buddy, God rest his soul, Tony Walker, on the way to an A is not an A, but I don't want, if we can't say that this isn't working because those students haven't hit proficiency yet. So what I would like to see is that data across multiple years saying, okay, this student is still growing exponentially faster than their cohorts across years 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Great point.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, questions on this one? And then we'll shift to Indiana Learns. I'm looking online. Any questions online? Okay, all right, let's go ahead and shift then. Thanks, Brandon.
All right, so the other program that we wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about is called Indiana Learns, which I know you all are aware of. Okay, there we go. So just a little bit of context for Indiana Learns. This started off as legislation in 2022 that called for a program that is now Indiana Learns to be established across the state to ensure that we were accelerating learning for students who need it the most. So we had the amazing opportunity to work really closely with DOE to structure this program and to make sure that we were thinking about how can we structure it in the most high quality way from the jump. So what the program is if you are a low-income student who was not proficient on either the math or the English I learned from the previous school year, you qualify for a $1,000 renewable grant that can be used for high-quality tutoring. And what we've tried to do on the front end is structure the program so that we are vetting the tutoring providers on the front end to ensure that we're only letting quality providers in to begin with. And then we also work to establish a platform that is really user-friendly. So if you're a family and if your student qualifies, you can log into that platform and then you have the resources loaded on the platform and then you can choose which provider to use your resources for. We also have the ability to work with schools and school districts on the front end to make sure that if a school district has a really high-quality approach to tutoring and say that they're working with a really good provider, we can make sure that we're working hand in glove with that school district to ensure that that provider is a clear option for families to be able to choose. So schools and school districts have really appreciated this program and are very excited about it because it provides intentional resources to augment what's already happening at their schools. We also wanted to make sure, again, like the last program, that this was covering students from across the state. So, really thinking about the areas of our state that might not have as many high-quality providers. When can we leverage, maybe some online tutoring? When might it make sense for that tutoring to be in person? We worked with DOE actually a couple of years ago to actually shift the legislation to allow tutoring to happen in the school day as well, because the research says that when you embed this work in the school day, that's where you can maximize results. So, really thinking about how can we structure this on the front end to only allow high-quality providers in, and then how can we make it as user-friendly for families to actually be able to access the program, use their resources, and then how can we do it in collaboration with schools and school districts across the state so it's not something happening on the side, but it can be infused in what's already happening in the school day. So the initial results here, over 23,000 students have enrolled across the state, which again blew away our expectations. And as of a few days ago, 253,000 hours of tutoring have happened, and that number is certainly higher now because the slide was made a few days ago. So the uptake on this is significantly more than what we all originally anticipated. And if you look at similar programs across the country, this far outpaces what many of them are seeing. Again, I think it's because the DOE's intentional design on the front end, making sure that we're working with schools and communities to recruit as many kids as possible, and then making it easy for families to be able to access the program.
Can I tell a quick, so I visited a classroom right in Indianapolis where a teacher was also an Indiana Learns teacher. And I spoke specifically to the teacher who was involved and then also some of the students who were a part of it. And the teacher this was always something that, serving his students and providing extra tutoring and support for his students was always a priority for him. But now he can provide his high-quality tutoring and get paid for that time. And I think that's an important element of this as well. We're looking at the quality of whether it's some of the vendors or even what we're seeing from some of our incredible teachers in Indiana classrooms who are providing this service to kids. But that teacher was so positive about the outcome that he was seeing, not only for the students, but also feeling appreciated in that way. Second thing is the group of students. Students are always very opinionated about instruction and learning. And the students I spoke to when it comes to tutoring were as excited as they could be about getting that extra support. And the biggest thing I grasped in the conversation is their increased confidence in this case, it was math that we were talking about. Their increased confidence in math, which is, as educators know, that's always the starting point. You have to build that confidence up to really reach the student. So just a personal example, and I would encourage board members or others we want to keep improving. So let's make sure we keep our educators who are facilitating this and our students and parents and families in mind as we continue to make it better.
That is right. I think my clipper stopped working here. If we could.
Can someone move the slide forward for Brandon?
Sorry. There we go. All right, so we talked about this. I think one thing to note is students in Indiana in schools of all types are eligible. And we've really seen amazing uptake from schools of all types across the state, which was, again, really important in the original design of the program. And the next slide just gives a snapshot of the scope. So if you just look at that, students from across the state are being served, and we have currently over 450 learning partners, and those can be outside organizations, they can be schools, they can be school districts, a variety of types. And we have analyzed this probably more than we have anything else we've ever done. So we, with the DOE, with external researchers, we're able to look at the 2024 iLearn results for both math and English and looked at a variety of things, right? So one, what was the effect of the overall program? Well, we have really positive effects in both math and English. The math effects are very large, and it's consistent with the national research on high quality tutoring. Usually you see, strong effects in both, but you see math as, really where you get the largest effects, and that was true in this program. If you look at the scale scores on the iLearn from 23 compared to 24 for students who are in the program compared to their peers, they made 36% more scale score growth than what was true for their peers. That is a very large effect in education research. The interesting data is that our Hispanic students and our English language learners made the most growth out of any other subgroup in the entire program. If you compare that with what we're seeing at the state level, those are the subgroups that are actually not making progress right now in Indiana. And it's an extraordinarily exciting finding to see them making the most progress in Indiana Learns. We also, as the Secretary mentioned, have evaluated every single learning partner. So we know which learning partners are making the most academic growth with students, and we're going to use all of that data then to continue to reevaluate the design of the program. One thing that we're considering is how can we be even more rigorous on the front end to make sure that we are only approving the highest quality providers, and then what might accountability look like for existing providers to make sure that there is an accountability component once you are actually approved to be a provider. So we are still working to finalize all of that research. Excited to kind of share that more broadly here pretty soon, but the initial findings are very exciting, in particular in math, and in particular for Hispanic students and English language learners, the very students that are not making a lot of progress at the state level.
And Brandon, we definitely want you to come back and share that data. I know we have a bit more data that we want to run on that before we share it widely. But I would say in the late winter months, we'd love to have you back.
Katie,
Yes, Dr. Ernest.
Remind me, because I don't remember, the $1,000 per student, the funding for this, is that sustained? Where are we on that?
Yes, so we, one, I just want to give amazing kudos to the DOE about how creative they have been to look at all of their existing funding sources.
Creative in a good way.
Yes, yes.
I was thinking that.
I know, everyone in the room was thinking that.
Creative financing.
Yeah.
No. I think, so what I wanted to say is a true partner at DOE, to say, hey, let's resource what is working. And because the demand for the program has been so high, we actually paused the program after the iLearn window last school year, and we didn't run it in the summer and just reopened it about a month ago because we wanted to maximize the resources that we have for this school year. We feel good about having enough resources to meet the need from now until the next iLearn window, and then we'll be working with DOE to figure out what a legislative appropriation could look like for next school year and beyond.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you have me. I was pulling out my line-by-line budget sheet that I'm carrying around with me everywhere. But Brandon, that was a great explanation. And you're going to see we're only going to ask the General Assembly to sustain what's working. And again, we'll reallocate other dollars to best support our schools and our students. But thank you for sharing that. And I would say more ahead on that too. Erica.
We would love to. So that was what we did the first year. And depending on resources, that is something that we would like to continue to do, knowing the summer slide research, and knowing that a lot of kids are not getting really any instruction during the summer. So we do think resource dependent. It would be important to provide this all year round. At the same time, we felt like we had to conserve as many resources as we could this year to get through the school year to really, maximize outcomes on the iLearn.
I think that'd be great as we're talking about remediation not necessarily being the solution, but accelerating learning. If we can maximize that time where they're not, where they're not getting that instruction and be able to do, expose them to this high quality program at that time, that would be great.
Great, thank you. And the other just background piece that I know you've heard me share when we talk about Indiana Learns is this came about, of course, during the pandemic, but it was specifically parents and families who raised their hand and said, I know my child's behind. I know they are struggling. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm struggling to make ends meet as it is. I can't pay for additional tutoring. I know my school's doing everything they can, but what can I do? So we, quite frankly, we tried this. We thought, you know what? We're going to give it a go. We're going to follow the data, and it's again been very, very positive. It's impressive to me how quickly it has scaled across the state. And I know we have more communities or schools, parents, and families who are interested. And question on that: the current window is open. Is that correct?
Yes, the current window is open. I think if we go a couple slides ahead to the last slide, so the current window for the Indiana Learns program is open, and it closes on Friday, December 20th. So anybody who is here or listening online, if you know a family, a school, or a school district that would like to participate, we actually have the website there, and we want as many students and families to enroll as possible prior to December 20th.
So Friday, December 20th, and it is open to students who are on free and reduced lunch, who have struggled language arts as demonstrated by their proficiency on iLearn. We have thousands of students who could be eligible for this. So Thank you for that. And if anyone in the room, whether it's association leaders, media, could help us get that word out to make sure parents and families know of the December 20th deadline, that would be super, so we can support as many kids as possible. Thank you, Brandon. Anything else from the board? Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. Okay, I can't believe it is only 49 minutes since we started this meeting based on how long we have been going as a board. Before I ask for adjournment, a motion to adjourn, again, I just will remind the board, statute requires us to approve a high school diploma rule by the end of December. As the board knows, we are on track to do exactly that. The synergy is there in Indiana around the current draft, and we will review that data and be in touch with all of the board members and other stakeholder groups, many of whom are present today or whom are listening, to get that final draft, and then we'll be ready for the board's approval in December. So thank you. This has been quite a year as a board in really pushing what matters for kids, making the 4 years of high school as valuable as possible for Indiana students, really pushing the work on reading, science of reading, STEM, and other topics. So let's continue to get after it. On that note,
Move to adjourn.
I knew it. Dr. Ernest starts the meeting and he ends the meeting. A motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Aye.
All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.